Welcome. This video series is dedicated to mastering the precise elements of three foundational common law felonies: burglary, arson, and larceny. For the purposes of the multi-state bar examination, success hinges entirely on your ability to recite these elements exactly as they are defined under the common law, regardless of how modern statutes may have subsequently modified them. We are not aiming for a general understanding. We are aiming for absolute mastery of every required act and every specific mental state associated with these crimes. We will dissect each offense systematically, ensuring you can articulate every component perfectly. This rigorous approach is necessary for high-stakes testing. Let us begin our detailed examination now with the first topic, burglary. Common law burglary requires the prosecution to prove 5 distinct elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, there must be a breaking. Second, there must be an entering. Third, this action must occur to the dwelling of another. Fourth, it must happen at nighttime. And finally, the act must be coupled with the intent to commit a felony therein. Let us focus immediately on the physical components. Breaking and entering. Breaking requires the creation of an opening, however slight. This means moving or putting aside any obstruction to gain entry, such as opening an unlocked door or window, or even pushing open a closed but unlocked door. Merely opening a door that is already ajar, however, is generally insufficient unless some force is used to widen the opening. Entering is satisfied when any part of the defendant's body, or any instrument controlled by the defendant, crosses the threshold of the dwelling. If a person sticks their hand or a tool through a window to unlock it, that constitutes the necessary entry, even if the rest of the body remains outside. These two elements must occur simultaneously with the requisite intent. Now that we have established the physical acts of breaking and entering, we must refine the remaining 2 crucial common law elements: the temporal requirement and the required mental state. First, regarding nighttime, common law required the act to occur when the solar disk was entirely below the horizon. This was a strict requirement based on astronomical time, not merely darkness. Second, the required intent is critical. The defendant must have possessed the intent to commit any felony inside the dwelling at the moment of entry. Crucially, this intent did not have to be larceny. It could be arson, murder, or any other common law felony. This distinguishes it from statutory versions. Finally, recognize that modern statutes have significantly relaxed these common law strictures. Many jurisdictions have eliminated the nighttime requirement entirely, allowing burglary at any time of day. Furthermore, the definition of the structure has expanded far beyond the common law dwelling house to include commercial buildings, vehicles, and other structures, often regardless of occupancy. We now pivot from the intricacies of burglary to the next foundational common law felony, arson. While modern statutes have broadened this offense considerably, mastering the common law definition is essential for the bar exam. Common law arson is precisely defined as the malicious burning of the dwelling house of another. Let us dissect these core components. First, the act must be done with malice. This means the defendant acted with the specific intent to burn the structure, or with extreme recklessness regarding the risk of fire to that dwelling. Second, the required act is burning. We will explore the strict meaning of burning in detail shortly, but for now, understand it requires actual damage to the structure itself. Most critically, the structure must satisfy the common law requirement of being a dwelling house of another. This is a highly restrictive element, meaning temporary structures or commercial buildings generally do not qualify under the common law rule. We must focus on this specific structure requirement before moving on to statutory variations. We must now scrutinize the common law requirement of burning. This element is strictly interpreted and is not satisfied merely by smoke damage or scorching. For common law arson to be established, there must be actual charring of the physical structure. Charring means the wood or material has actually caught fire and begun to combust, even if the fire extinguishes itself immediately afterward. Scorching, which is merely discoloration from heat, is insufficient to meet the common law actus reus. Next, we refine the definition of a dwelling. Under common law, this term is highly restrictive. It must be a structure used for human habitation. Crucially, it must be currently occupied, or at the very least, intended for immediate occupancy. A vacant building, even if intended for future residence, typically fails this common law test. These strict common law interpretations contrast sharply with modern statutes, which often expand arson to cover virtually any structure and may lower the threshold for what constitutes burning. However, for the bar exam, remember the common law's high bar: actual charring of an occupied dwelling. Having thoroughly examined the strict requirements for common law arson, we now pivot to the third major common law felony, larceny. Larceny is defined as the trespassory taking and carrying away of the personal property of another with the intent to permanently deprive. This definition is precise and must be memorized. We begin our analysis with the initial physical act, the taking. The taking element requires that the defendant obtain possession of the property. Crucially, this possession must be obtained without the owner's consent. If the owner voluntarily transfers possession, even if they were tricked about the purpose, the initial taking element might fail, leading us toward crimes like false pretenses or embezzlement later on. For larceny, the key is that the defendant assumes dominion and control over the property unlawfully, meaning the owner did not willingly give up possession. This is the trespassory aspect of the taking. Now that we have established the trespassory taking, we move to the second physical requirement of larceny, the carrying away, often termed asportation. This element is remarkably easy to satisfy. Asportation requires only that the property be moved, even slightly, from its original position. If the defendant successfully gains possession, any movement, however minuscule, fulfills the asportation requirement. The final, and perhaps most defining, element of larceny is the required mental state, the intent to permanently deprive the owner of their property, known classically as animus furandi. This specific intent must exist at the very moment of the taking. This requirement is what truly separates larceny from other theft offenses. If the defendant takes property intending only to borrow it temporarily, or if they intend to return it later, the specific intent for larceny is missing. Furthermore, this intent distinguishes larceny from crimes where the initial possession was lawful, such as embezzlement or false pretenses, where the defendant might later form the intent to keep the property, but the initial acquisition was consensual or authorized. We have now thoroughly examined the distinct elements for common law, burglary, arson, and larceny. To succeed on the multistate bar examination, you must internalize the differences, particularly concerning the required mental state, or mens rea. Burglary and larceny both demand a high level of culpability, specific intent. For burglary, it is the specific intent to commit a felony inside. For larceny, it is the specific intent to permanently deprive. Arson stands apart, requiring only malice, which can be satisfied by intent to burn or extreme recklessness regarding the burning of the dwelling. Remember, the physical acts are distinct, but the mental states are often the key differentiator tested. Memorize these precise formulations, as statutory modifications often hinge on these core common law concepts. Mastering these distinctions is crucial for tackling property and homicide-related questions on the exam.